Octo is pleased to bring you this Planner Unplugged series in partnership with Scottish Widows, focused on helping advisors deliver better outcomes for clients today and in the future. Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Planner Unplugged from Octo members. I'm Katey Pigden, Content Director, and as ever, I'll allow my guests to introduce themselves. So Kevin, over to you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Mugisha, financial consultant at Vantage Wealth Management.
Okay, Kevin, so tell me a little bit about what you do there.
Thanks for having me, Katey. Yes, financial consultant at Vantage Wealth Management. So essentially a financial advisor, helping and supporting clients with all holistic planning.
Lovely. And how did you get into this, Kevin?
Well, previously I was at AIG as a protection consultant, where I would speak to financial advisors all the time on a daily basis. And they would tell me a bit about the role. And, you know, as I became more and more intrigued and more questions, I kind of thought maybe this is something I could do and started working towards my exams. And here we are.
Absolutely. And you've been doing a few of those exams recently. I think there was
Yes.
a pass quite recently.
Yes. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks very much. That was for the diploma, actually, and that was the sixth and final one, RO6, and now I'm diploma qualified, which is fantastic.
Yeah. How much of a nervous wait was it for those once you sit the exams and you're waiting for the results?
RO1 to 5 was actually not too bad, as it's pretty instant. As soon as you hit end test, it either comes up with a massive pass or a massive fail. And that 30 seconds is long enough, in all honesty. But for the RO6, I believe it's an 8-week wait. So
Oh,
a bit nail biting for those 8 weeks. But I got the job done.
all good. Tick. We can move on from there. So what was that process like of going through the exams? Was there one that was your least favourite, your most favourite?
I'd probably say the pensions one was one I actually struggled with, which is something I enjoy speaking about with clients now. So it's funny how things work out, but that was the one I struggled with the most. I think it was just because it was a bit of a new area coming from a protection background, but you know, it's managed to become one of my strongest areas now. So it's funny how these things work out.
Absolutely. Yeah. I always sort of found the theory of doing something and the actual practical sort of side of things can be very different, even though you're doing it day in, day out. For some reason, there's that thing of associating something with an exam as well, though. It's like, oh, no, I apparently know nothing about this subject. Even though I do.
Absolutely, the pressure. Let's less sleepless nights now. Let's just say that.
So how did you get into protection in the first place then? What was your entry into that before you decided, oh, financial advisor sounds good?
So I actually went to the University of Portsmouth and I studied sports and exercise science, which is a bit of a cross, but I think no one actually falls into protection, but everyone who does is always, you know, fortunate they have and finds a fulfilling career from it. So when I'd actually come out of university, I was looking for a role and, you know, found a BDM role at AIG, as they were looking for someone to support their sales team. And from there, I, you know, immersed myself into the role and learned all about protection and learned the massive difference these advisors are making to their clients and us as an insurer were actually making to our clients. And I thought this was fantastic. So I stepped in it with both feet, put all my efforts into it. And that's actually where I started the exam journey, as I took my CF1 and LP2, which are not part of the diploma, but they are level 3 credits, I believe. And I think that's what got me started into studying and working towards my diploma, which I've got now. And fingers crossed, one day I'll be chartered.
So that's the plan, is it, Kevin? Like
Yes.
you'd like that chartered title?
Yeah. Yeah. I've said it now, so you've got to hold it to me.
Exactly. We'll come back to this and we'll see how agonising a wait that is to find that result. But what is it about that chartered status? Because there's a bit of a debate within the profession, really, as to do you need it, do you not? Do clients value it? Do they understand it? Do they know what financial advice and planning is in the first place?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I like it as not everyone has it, so I think it's allows you to provide a breadth of knowledge that not everyone has, and allows you to stand up amongst the rest, which
Yeah.
is why I think it's going to be something good to aim towards. And of course, it's always good to upskill your knowledge, isn't it?
Absolutely. So are you supported by your firm when you're sort of going through these exams, or how does that work? Do you have
Yes.
to
Yeah.
fund them yourself?
Yes, yeah. So whilst I was at AIG, they supported me as well, which was fantastic, and helped me with a bit of studying and also the process of sitting the exams. As I was entirely new to it, as it's completely different to the coursework I was doing at uni, as you can imagine. And then even when I've joined this practice here, they've been really supportive and helped me throughout the whole process.
Fantastic. It's great to hear. What was your perception of financial advice before you joined this profession?
That's a good question. I probably, like anyone else, I didn't have a clue about what it was or what a financial advisor does, and I think I had the misconception that everyone unfortunately falls for, is that it's only for the elite wealthy or the millionaires in that sense. But what I've been able to understand, and what, even what we try and help our clients with, is financial advice is for everyone, and everyone deserves to help implement a plan into their life and get them from point A to B.
So how do we make that more accessible then, or make people not feel that it's only for the wealthy? Because I suppose depending on which advisors you speak to, sometimes it is, oh no, unless they have a certain amount of assets with them or have built up a certain amount of wealth, then it's not really going to be viable for me. But we do need to close that advice gap. It's rather stubborn at the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think the way we can close it by getting more advisors into the profession, making sure that we're hiring people who are young, people who are old, people from all different backgrounds, to ensure we're just spreading the message of advice and that support to more individuals.
Yeah. So what advice would you give, Kevin, to anyone that's thinking of pursuing this career then? How should they go about it?
Well, good question. I think definitely get your exams done. That is the entry point, and I think they're the real sticking point of whether you are going in this with full focus, or maybe you're not too sure whether you are. As I think that's the hurdle a lot of people trip up on. But once you've sort of gone through the exams, you've taken the effort, you become a bit engrossed into the role and the career that you could have from it. So I'd definitely suggest getting your exams done. First, I think you can start with either R1 or R5. They're usually a good barrier to entry, and that kind of gets you started within the role and gets you the knowledge that you need to kind of understand a bit more about what the role is and how you can help clients and the regulation and all the important bits.
So you don't have to do them in order then. It doesn't have to be 1 to 6. You
No,
can jump in at any one, can you?
anyone, yeah. So if you do have a strong point, then it's probably best to start with that. Like I, of course, came from a protection background. However, and I could have gone for the RO5 first, but I think RO1 is good because it's a more of a rounded approach across the board.
Yeah.
So it's a good base to start with. But I definitely suggest going with wherever you're strongest with and then going from there.
Do you know, I feel like I've been writing about this for quite some time, and I don't think I've ever realized, what does RO stand for? Is there
I don't think you're asking the right person. I wish I knew.
so we know we've just got to do them, but
Yes, absolutely. I can Google it, but no.
yeah, I might have to look this up myself now,
Yeah,
because I do feel like, oh, it feels like it's obviously a numbered order thing, but
yeah.
and each one has different things. So what types of things do the exams touch on then? So you've mentioned protection, pensions, a bit more rounded. What some of the others focus on?
So I think the RO2, I believe, is the investment principles. RO3 is tax, and then RO4 is pensions, as I said. RO5 is protection, and then RO6 is more of a rounded approach. Again, a coursework touching on the financial planning aspect. So they're really good, especially now doing the role and supporting clients in my day to day. Looking back, they have aided me with the knowledge I have now to support clients and give them the correct and accurate advice. So they definitely may seem lengthy at the time, but they have their place and they're there for a reason.
Yeah. So how long has it taken you to get to this stage, Kevin?
Good question. Well, I took RO1 last January, I believe. So January 2024 is when I passed that. And then, yes, up until October, well, November actually was when I passed my RO6. So guess about just under 2 years.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, so there's no time frame that you have to have achieved it by. You can take it at your pace
yes,
and
yeah, yeah,
but
absolutely.
go for what works for you. That's brilliant. So protection. Actually, a lot of wealth advisors don't tend to advise on the protection side of things. And I've always felt that that's a bit at odds that you're trying to build up this plan for someone, you're putting them on the right track, but not necessarily providing the safety nets that they could benefit from. So what's your I know you're quite involved in the protection space, Kevin. So do you want to tell us a little bit more
Yes.
about
Yeah. 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 I think coming from a protection background is definitely something I'm quite passionate about. And I think it's the foundation of all financial planning, as you've just said, because if you're building a plan, if something is to go wrong or, unfortunately the clients to suffer from a serious illness or anything that could happen that could detriment their plan, wouldn't you want to have some contingencies in place to make sure they are protected and their family can be supported if the worst was to happen? So I think it's not the best idea to ignore it that some wealth managers like to do. I think it is becoming more of the forefront of advisors' mind across the board, and the fantastic work the Income Protection Task Force is doing is aiding that. But I think it is a massive, massive importance for all clients.
do you start the conversations with clients then on that protection basis?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I think it shapes my advice, just making sure that they're protected, and then we can kind of go on to the other aspects.
So I think some advisors struggle with how do you broach that? Because it is something that we all want to think it doesn't happen to us, right? These
Yeah.
horrible things happen to other people. Unfortunately, we know they do happen, but somehow we feel we're going to be immune from it. It's not going to happen to me. I'll be
Yeah.
absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of the challenge of some advisors think, how do I start this maybe? Or obviously if they haven't specialized in it, I understand that it might be easier to signpost to someone who does, and we probably shouldn't ignore these conversations completely. I'm sure obviously every client's different, but how do you broach it then? How do you bring it up, because
I
it is
think
very sensitive?
I think you're right. It's about it is going to be uncomfortable, but it's letting the client know that it's uncomfortable conversation that we have to have. And I'd rather be having this uncomfortable conversation now rather than a very different conversation to either your spouse or to you at a later point, knowing that I didn't do my job correctly, advising you on protection and letting you know the protection solutions that are available and that you need to have that sort of suits your lifestyle.
Yeah.
So I think it is uncomfortable. It's just about biting the bullet and telling clients that they may have the Superman syndrome, as you said, whereby they believe it's not going to happen to me, but you have to help them with claim stats and testimonials and personal experiences to help paint the picture and visualize that this could happen. And there's a reason we're having this conversation. And I wouldn't be doing my job right if I was to skip over this just because you're not because possibly that could be a barrier as well. The client may not just fully understand the seriousness of what could happen,
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
unfortunately we all believe we are superhuman.
I know. It's a strange sort of phenomenon, isn't it? That we have this feeling, and you can understand that you want to think the best of things, but we know certain things are inevitable, unfortunately. So that life insurance conversation and potentially around mortgages and stuff, that feels a little bit easier. People do seem to be a bit more accepting of that one. But you mentioned the income protection task force. We're all taught to go out, get a job, get an income, but we don't necessarily think what happens if that income was to disappear or there's something that's going to impact that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's, in my opinion, your most valuable asset because your income's going to pay you up until retirement. If that was to stop, everything else falls and dissipates, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kevin, you look on the younger side of the advice profession as well,
Yeah.
and we've got a bit of a thing. I think you said about we need to attract new people into it, whether that's old or young, second careerists. There's a whole host of entries and ways in, but how do we make it more appealing? Because, like we said, if people haven't really heard of it, I'm hoping conversations like this has spread that message a little bit further. But yeah, what's the thing of how do we
Well,
solve
I
that?
think given in my example, for instance, is I found out about it at quite a latter stage, once I'd already been through university, sort of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. Possibly we should look at speaking to individuals at a younger age, so universities, possibly schools, explaining this is an option and, this is quite a good career path where you could help a lot of people and you could be quite successful from it. For example, from creating your own business, there's a whole range of options. It's helping the younger generation be aware of their options.
Yeah. Because I didn't feel that there was that career advice that it came up as an option. And we're starting to see there's a little bit more movement around the financial literacy and trying to get a little bit more of that education, because we also leave school ill-equipped for knowing about budgeting and saving and pensions and all of these things that as adults we suddenly need to be aware of or try to be aware.
Yes, yeah. Don't get me started, Katey. I don't think we've got long enough because that really bugs me that we aren't taught about that in schools, and they're so important. Mortgages, for example, aren't something that was mentioned to me long up until possibly I was in university. But I think from such a younger age, we need to be understanding of this massive debt that you take on to purchase a property. And these are natural stages of life, so I don't see why they're not taught at such younger ages.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange thing, isn't it? Of some of
Yeah,
the things that you remember back from school, going, not sure how much I'm using that at the
yeah,
moment,
yeah.
but could have benefited from some other things. So you said you love the idea of putting that plan in place for someone, and I suppose part of that is finding out their hopes, their dreams, their aspirations. So how do some of those conversations go? Because do
Yeah,
people know that that's what the intention is?
they don't always know immediately, but through obviously we have quite a few meetings discussing the options and what things are going to look like, and maybe through prompts from my end of natural life progressions, and they eventually do come to conclusions of what they want to achieve. Or some people have it all mapped out from day one. It's quite interesting speaking to different people and seeing how they view their future years. Um, but yeah, it's really enjoyable.
But that's great in terms of someone that has got it mapped out. Do you feel, oh, how do I now show my value in this? I've got to help them get to this point,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
suppose.
And that's where you probably dig into their goals a bit further and see if they've got the roadmap on how they get in there, and just helping them understand what hurdles they may face, as you've mentioned, protection, or what can be done so that they're dead on certain to achieve those goals.
Because I suppose sometimes there is that challenging conversation of, yes, that's all well and good that you want that, but in order to get to that point, you need this or you need to be
Yes.
doing
Yeah.
this. So how do clients react to that sometimes, where it's maybe not as positive as they'd like in the initial stage?
Depends on the person. Some people are very receptive. Some people need a bit of nudging, as I said. So those people, I think it's just being a bit more gentle and just reacting to different people's learnings, because we all take on information in different ways, and we just may need to be coached a bit more in some instances on, and possibly that could be through more time spent with the client, explaining things in a bit more of a slower detail, whereas others, they may get it on the first instance, but you want to make sure they fully understand and go over things a few times.
Do you feel advisors are becoming more of a coach? You're helping someone in their life. Sometimes there's that talk of like psychologist as well, that you're dealing
Yeah.
with difficult things that may be going on, but
Yeah.
potentially advisor wears more than one hat.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think we we tend to do psychologist, coach, all sorts, but I love it. That's what makes the role, and it's a really people focused role. So you're really getting to understand these people's lives, and you really get to know them and support them through their journey over the longer term.
Yeah. So how do you go about getting clients, Kevin? What's
Getting
your,
clients.
yeah,
So we do a lot of marketing online, through social media. I think it's one of those ever-growing assets. There's so many people on social media, so it's always important to utilize that, as well as working with referrals. When I've done a good job for a client, I sort of ask if they'd be happy to speak to a family member or a friend, and there's always someone who can who needs a bit of advice and hasn't possibly thought about their next stages of life, or how they're going to get there. So that's always useful. There's other things such as networking events, which I attend on time to time.
Brilliant. And you mentioned that referral stuff, but I know you're also quite proud of some of the reviews that you get
Yes,
from
yeah,
your clients. I've seen you post about that before. And I think, again, that's another one that advisors sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable of asking someone to maybe leave that review so someone else can benefit from it. So, how do you go about that? Is that something that you actively do? Do you ask people to leave reviews? Do you leave it
yes.
up to them completely?
Yeah, so well, a bit of both really. Sometimes I leave it up to them and, have my sort of review link that they can click on from my signature. But some people I do actively ask, especially after we have gone through the whole advice process and maybe we're at, let's say, completion where I'm presenting the advice to them and they've said they're happy to go ahead. I know that that's probably the best point where they're happy with the advice and, they feel really good about themselves for implementing this plan. So that would be the perfect time to ask them for a review. And, if they feel I've done a good job, that, they're happy with it, they're definitely happy to leave a review. So
It
that's what I'd suggest for other advisors.
it must feel quite rewarding as well when you then see how you have helped someone, because I think that value of advice, it's hard to articulate, and actually the people that have benefited are the ones that probably can tell that story a bit better, because it's great, being an advisor and then saying, oh, I can do this, this and this, but I suppose no one wants to feel that show offy and pushy. Whereas if someone else is singing your praises,
Yeah,
potentially that feels a nicer, easier route.
absolutely. Absolutely.
In terms of content and things, how do you go about that? Because there's that line between advice and guidance. We know the regulators paying closer attention to that and trying to help bridge that gap that we were talking about earlier for the advice gap. So did this come naturally to you in terms of being on these social media platforms and trying to put content out in that way? Or
Well, not at first. And, it's funny, I'm noticing a theme here because asking for reviews, it wasn't comfortable at first, but it's got to be done. Asking for referrals, not comfortable, it's got to be done. And social media, not comfortable at first, but it's got to be done. It's just one of those things and barriers you have to get over and put yourself out there, because that's how you're going to generate new business and be able to speak to more clients. Social media, and I know it's a bit uncomfortable for some, particularly putting yourself out there. It's a very big thing to do, but you're only going to regret possibly missing out on opportunities, and everyone has to start somewhere. Some of my earlier content definitely wasn't the greatest. I still don't think it's
neither was mine, Kevin. Don't worry. I'm still learning now.
yeah, exactly. And I still don't think it's particularly amazing now, but you're learning as you're going over, over time and doing it again and again. And it's all a bit of that old saying, practice makes perfect.
Yeah. But I think also it's putting out that information for people, because it does feel, like we said, if we've not had that education, if we've come out unsure about these things, we don't know how some of these things work. And we're not necessarily, that's no fault of our own. And we're not all experts in everything. So we wouldn't go to a doctor and think, oh, well, I know more than them
So
anyway. We just expect that there's going to be certain experts in things. But finances, again, just feels that awkward thing to talk about sometimes, and potentially how you've grown up around money, how your family treat it. So I was talking to somebody else and we were saying about, your financial things have formed at the age of 7. That's
yes,
that's pretty young if we haven't had much of that education around it as well.
yeah, absolutely. And I think particularly with social media, there's so much misinformation out on
Yes.
TikTok and Instagram from people who aren't in this industry and regulated. So I think if you're in the industry, you regulated, you can provide the advice. You're sort of doing a disservice by not putting yourself out there and spreading correct information opposed to possibly some of the incorrect information that could
Yeah.
be already out there.
And there's so much, isn't there? And that can spiral pretty quickly, that people then feel and take that as gospel. And it's very tricky, because this is people's livelihoods. This is their money, retirement prospects. There's a lot at stake. And I think we've got enough challenges as it is, whether the future retirees will have that comfortable retirement that we talk about. And I know that will feel different for everybody, but it feels if we can have more of those professional voices, potentially drowning out some of that misinformation and just helping point people in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you were doing a lot of commentary in the run up to the budget. Obviously, that was quite a lengthy time. I mean, probably while you were waiting for your exams, we were still waiting for this budget to come through.
Yeah.
What were your thoughts on it, Kevin?
And well, I think it
it
wasn't as bad as people anticipated. That's probably why I was doing so much content as well, just because there was, again, a lot of misinformation out there and people spreading rumours that weren't particularly true and didn't come to light whatsoever. I think the budget was what it was. It wasn't that groundbreaking, in all honesty. So it was good to spread the message of just wait till the day, wait to see what actually comes out, and then let's react off of that. There's no point jumping the gun and jumping to conclusions on what, just see what she actually does. And what she did wasn't too groundbreaking or ground moving. I think, people can adapt to her decisions.
Have you had many concerns from clients now that we know what the outcome of the budget was?
Well, I had many concerns prior, but post, it's been not too bad whatsoever. I think clients have come to terms with their decisions, and as I said, they're a bit subdued to what they actually expected.
Yeah, sometimes that's the better way, isn't it? That if you were expecting a worse outcome and it's not so terrible, that's fine. But is it becoming harder to advise clients around this speculation? Obviously, like we said, this was a long run up to this particular one, but there's the kites that were being flown, then there's this is happening, then it's not happening. Then obviously social media may be sharing some things that definitely weren't going to happen anyway, but people think they are. How difficult is that becoming? Because I suppose everyone has access to all of this information constantly coming at them.
If anything, I sort of feel reassured and quite happy in myself when I can put those concerns to bed, because that's what we're here for. Of course, whilst we're here to aid clients with the initial investment and whatever they do and creating that plan for the future, I think that's a big aspect of the job, is supporting them through the journey, and supporting them with those concerns ongoing is where I feel joy, because clients can actually feel a bit relieved. Oh, speaking to Kevin, it's not as bad as it sounds. We'll be all right.
And now for a few words from our content partner, Scottish Widows.
Business protection is still underserved, and clients feel it when the unexpected happens. Scottish Widows is committed to this market, a multi-year investment in our protection platform, the launch of our reassuringly simple income protection and journey enhancement. It all adds up to simpler conversations and smoother delivery. If you'd like to find out more, please contact our business development team by emailing protectsales@lloydsbanking.com.
So Kevin, do you interact with many other advisors in the sector? Do you learn from each other, share knowledge?
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly working with the income protection task force, I think us 7 advisors all quite close knit. I'm working together, sharing ideas, possibly potential hiccups with providers, seeing if there's anything we can do to get around that, or if anyone's experienced a similar thing. So I think it's always good for advisors to work together, because we're all trying to achieve the same goal, essentially supporting clients and then getting them the best advice possible. So it's definitely an aid to work together, other than seeing each other as competition.
And do you feel that is more of a collaborative profession?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And it was something I was quite concerned about before I joined, but absolutely it's not been the case. Everyone's so willing to offer a helping hand.
Maybe while the figure is 9% of people accessing advice, that's fine. If in future that increases, maybe it won't be as friendly, but we'll see. How did you get involved with the Income Protection Task Force then? So you mentioned you're one of the 7 advisors at the moment and be telling some of those stories. I believe that role will be shifting as we then go into 2026 to an ambassador role. But yeah, what was your involvement in the first place?
Yeah. So I think it was around April this year, I sort of saw a social media post out around they were looking for another batch of 7 advisors. And as I've said, I've always been passionate about protection, and particularly income protection. I don't think it's valued enough by advisors or even known about by clients. They don't actually know they can protect their income for the sick pay arrangements they'll have with their employer. So I think I latched at the opportunity to apply, sent in my video, and luckily, lo and behold, I was accepted as one of the 7 advisors. And since then, I've been able to work on some fantastic initiatives, a report with Iris, and loads of different things, just ensuring that income protection is at the forefront of all advisors and individuals' minds.
It was actually at the mid-year event, just as I joined Octo, that I first met you, Kevin. So I saw, your input there. But it does feel a great initiative to get people talking a lot more. And do you feel the dial's moving? Is it
I think
changing?
so. I think we're definitely making a difference. Some of the providers across the industry, I've been able to see that some of the income protection sales have actually gone up as well. And definitely, I know it has done for my firm. So I think we are making a difference, and income protection is being sold more and more clients are being protected.
So how did you get into the firm that you're at now then? So I know you said you've had that protection background, obviously started doing some of the exams, but what was it that attracted you to where you are?
Well, when I was back at AIG, so I was actually made redundant due to the
There was a lot
Aviva.
of changes going on there, wasn't there? Yeah.
Yeah. So due to the Aviva acquisition, which was the back end of last year, well, it was an ongoing thing for a very long time. I unfortunately lost my role, and I was thinking, been taking some of these exams, I want to make the jump towards holistic financial planning. Maybe this is a sign, this is the perfect time. And I started looking for opportunities in London, and there was a firm that came up. I went for a couple of interviews and luckily ended up landing the role, and they supported me whilst I was still going through my exams up until I was out there advising.
What did that feel like quite early on in your career, Kevin, to be made redundant? I remember a similar thing happening to me. I was promised a long, successful career at a publication, was promoted after 9 months and thought, oh, this is great. And then 9 months later was made redundant. And suddenly, when you're fairly on the start of that journey, it is quite a daunting prospect of, oh, what do I do now?
Yeah, it wasn't heavy at the time, definitely, and there was a lot of panic. But I think it's not a personal decision whatsoever. It's just something that comes with business, and sometimes I think it breeds new opportunity. So it kind of can push you out of your comfort zone. And particularly when I'd been at AIG for 4 years, I think it allowed me to step into the next role, whereas possibly I could have held off and been comfortable within my previous role for a couple more years.
Yeah, in a way, it sort of pushed you into that advice
Yeah,
world, whereas, yeah, potentially you could have been staying there a little bit longer, and we wouldn't have had you as one of these advisors that
yeah,
we could on
exactly.
the podcast. So it's I'm glad it's all worked out, but it does show, I think, some of the challenges that are facing some of the generations coming as well, that it is potentially harder to get jobs, or how do you sort of find it? But again, talking about that income, it just shows when there is that concern that it might not be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So what do you love most about your job then, Kevin? I would imagine no 2 days are exactly the same. Obviously, every client's different, but what is it that gets you out of bed every morning to carry
Probably
on doing this?
speaking to different clients and supporting them through their journey, because as you say, no two clients are the same, no two plan is the same. And I think knowing that someone can put their confidence in you, and they feel assured that you're going to look after them and look after their money, it's a very big and an emotional decision. So I think knowing that I'm doing the right thing for them and supporting them, and they feel confident in me making the right decisions and doing the best for them and their families and their future, is something that gets me out of bed every day, and looking to just support more and more people offering that advice.
Do your peers understand the job that you do? Obviously, you said about your degree was a little bit of a different track. So, some of your friends from there, do they understand it? Are they seeking advice?
Not at first, but I think as the gradual process has gone on, some of them were a bit like, "Oh, what are you doing now?" "Oh, okay." And then, "Oh, maybe let's have a chat," a couple of months later. Yeah, so at first it was a bit of a transition because unfortunately not many people are aware of the role or what it is, and I think, oh, that sounds cool, but I don't really know what it is, and now they're interested in possibly even receiving some advice.
Yeah. What not just the advice profession, but the wider industry. What do you think could be done to better support clients? Is there a way that we're letting clients down that we could be doing something?
I think with the FCA consumer duty that's recently come in, we're definitely doing what we can to aid clients in that sense, but I think there's always more that can be done to support them. If you were to press me on a question right now, and particularly how we could do so, I don't think I could give you an answer, but I think always just making sure that we're trying to adhere to those consumer duty principles and provide them the best outcomes possible and ensure that they're getting fair value for their money and the advice as a whole. I think that's definitely down the route that we need to continue down. And I know some people are not as happy with the regulation that's come in, or they feel that it possibly leads to too much compliance. But I think if it's all in the client's best interest, it's for the right reasons at the end of the day.
I was speaking to another advisor recently, and she was saying that she couldn't believe that this just wasn't a thing before. She
Definitely.
came, it was also, that new thing just coming in, but it was like, oh, hasn't everyone had the best interest of the clients anyway
Yeah,
up until this point? And I've always thought, I suppose the bad actors will always try and find ways and not necessarily do the right things. And I know there's been talk of potentially the duplication that's come with the regulation, or that it's become a little bit harder in that sense, or that evidence required. But you think ultimately, if clients are getting those better outcomes, and it's just making us think about how we evidence that a little bit more, surely that's got to be a good thing. Yes, there may be some work around it to have got to that stage. Hopefully it will get easier as time goes on to do those things once you've introduced them. But I don't feel that it can be that bad, surely, to make sure clients are getting well looked after.
exactly. Yeah. It's just all in their best interest, all that they're getting looked after. There's obviously going to be some teething issues with it being a new process and a bit of a transition period. But I think if the client's really at the forefront of your mind, it shouldn't be too much of a concern or issue.
In terms of the profession as well, then, so you were saying about the support that you get, do you feel what's that challenge of what are advisors facing? What are some of the challenges that they're facing? Is regulation the biggest thing that's keeping them awake at night? Is it something else?
It's definitely a hot topic. Regulation is always is, and I think because it's going to be an always moving needle. You mentioned social media, so that's always been regulated as well, just to ensure that what you're putting out there is compliant. So I would probably, I'd probably have to say regulation. There's nothing else that comes to mind.
With all these exams that you've done, and obviously hoping to do the sort of chartered stuff, how do you keep on top of everything that is changing? Because new regulations do come into play. As we know, tax rules change around pensions. I've been asking this a lot recently because I just felt it is a lot to contend with, and
Yeah, it
that
is.
you confident giving that advice to someone. How do you keep on top of all these
It's a
things?
lot to juggle, but I think my firm and network are quite good at supporting us with relevant training materials and things that we need to keep on top of. And I think that provides a lot of reassurance for me that I'm giving the right advice. I'm on top of things where I need to be, but of course, I'm not solely reliant on them. I'm of course keeping updated on the budget. I watch that from start to finish.
Yeah,
So,
likewise.
so doing things like that, little bits outside, and just making sure that you're aware of what's going on and seeing how this could impact you, your clients, and anyone you're speaking to, really, so you can provide that guidance.
Yeah. And do you go to lots of other industry events? I know obviously the income protection stuff, but are there other things that you're going to, or things that you recommend to other people?
I try to, keep on top of it through my networking to sort of generate new clients. I think there's always different solicitors I may be speaking to, and I'll find out what's going on in their world, or even accountants. I'm quite close with quite a few different professional connections that kind of we can share knowledge in that sense as well. That's always helpful. So it's good to build a network in that sense, particularly for new advisors.
And does that work in terms of client referrals as well,
Mm.
Kevin?
Yeah.
Because if someone's putting a will in place, then obviously what do their pensions and their things estate look like and all that sort of intergenerational planning. So I would imagine those professional connections are very important to grow your.
Yes. Absolutely, absolutely. And you never know what may come out of it. There may be opportunities I can offer them, as you've said, opportunities that come back to me. And I think it's just about having that arm where you can support your clients, because I don't want a client to ask me for something and then I say, no, I can't help you with that. I want to be
Yeah.
able to say, no, speak to Rob or whoever it may be.
I think one thing I noticed on, I don't know if it's potentially your LinkedIn, where you said if you can't help someone, you'll certainly find
Yeah.
the person who can. And I think that's a nice way to look at it. When you are doing these professional connections, do you ever all gather in the room at the same time and have that one person in front of you to maybe
No,
about
no.
those things?
I definitely leave them to explore their world and I'll explore mine.
But I was wondering about jargon, industry jargon, because it's quite guilty of that at times, that it talks in this way, and it probably doesn't help that message of people not feeling like they understand what some of these things are and what these products and services are. So, how important is it for you in terms of how you communicate to clients?
I think breaking things down and I think I've heard in the past is almost explaining it sometimes as if you would to your mother or someone elderly, teaching anyone to suck eggs or to belittle anyone, but just making sure that everyone's got a full understanding and always just checking in, because not everyone needs it to be broken down to full extent, but making sure you're giving the base and explaining it in simple terms, because as you said, not everyone's going to understand the financial jargon, and then based on their knowledge and understanding, you can kind of adapt where they're.
So if it was a first meeting with you, Kevin, what would your approach be? Obviously, you're going to talk me through some of my protection sort of things. You're going to try and find out what I'm hoping to sort of do, and then how do you go on from there as well?
So usually it would be a discovery meeting, yeah. So just an opportunity for me to get to know the client to get to know me, and then see where our interests may align, what they're looking to do, why they've sort of taken the meeting, and just exploring more of what I do and how that may fit into their journey. So once I've done that, gathered all the information on all the figures, we move on to a second meeting, which is more so related to cash flow modeling, where we use a tool to input all their figures and provide any details on possible shortfalls they may have on the future, and help build the plan alongside what they've got currently going on. And third, we'd go into presentation meeting, and fourth, we'd meet again to implement it together. So it's definitely not a one step and done. It's a bit of a elongated process to make sure what we're doing is right.
I know advisors talk very highly of cash flow modeling tools and really enjoy using those. And does that really help paint that picture for clients? What's it like on the receiving end? I
Yes,
suppose. Um,
absolutely. Because as you sort of said, I can explain all I want and use all the sort of simple language and financial jargon, mix it all up. But until a client actually sees their life there mapped out in front of them, that's when the penny really drops.
Trying to delve into what someone wants, it's quite hard for us to picture what our future self looks like, I suppose, in terms of if you are retirement planning and thinking, yep, okay, I want to give up my job or I want to do this. And what does that beyond those first 6 months? I think someone was saying to me, like when you've done okay, you don't have to get up at this particular time, or you've taken it easy and you've gone to see some friends, that purpose in retirement, I think all of those things coming together. So I suppose those tools of trying to see what you need and what that lifestyle would look like. But do you clients find it difficult to think, I can't picture what this future me looks like?
Yes, yeah, definitely some struggle with grasping that point in their life, especially as if it's such a long time away as well. But I think it's about understanding what they're doing currently. Would they like to continue doing that? Maybe they're going on 2 holidays a year currently. Now they're going to have all the extra free time. Would they be like to go on 4 holidays a year? Are there grandchildren who could be involved? Would they like to spend time with them? There's all sorts to think about and all sorts to help them picture the journey, really.
As we're coming to an end, Kevin, is there a personal money rule that you live by?
That's a good question. Even where possible is always a good one. I know that's quite bland, but I think it's always good to put some money aside for a rainy day, and then also make sure that you're possibly investing where possible, so you're getting that return on it. So it's hard to give you a one size fits all, but I'd definitely just say that one probably does apply to everyone. Saving where possible, and putting money away for the future is what you definitely need to be doing.
And Kevin, when did you start saving? Have you always been a saver?
um, mm, I've always had an interest in saving and money, and hence why I do the role now. So I'd say probably quite young, probably around 10. I'd have kind of liked to save my pocket money there maybe, and possibly use it to buy a new pair of trainers, which may not have been the best decision, but at least I was putting it away for the future and letting it compound, which kind of relates to what we try and do now for clients.
Well, I think it's not about not buying certain things, is it? It's just trying to work out that instant
Yeah.
gratification, maybe versus the longer term. And is that something clients struggle with that now and future? Of
I wouldn't
okay, if I save, but maybe I'm not spending now, or if I'm spending too much, then my future's at risk.
think some clients do, but a lot are quite good at just understanding. Investing is definitely for the longer term, so you want to be putting that money away, giving it the opportunity to grow, but as well as that, have fun where possible, and spend whilst you can, because we all don't know how long we're around for,
No,
unfortunately.
and that's the thing, isn't it? But definitely the younger sort of thing. I've been trying to teach my nephew about that. Of like, right, you might not need this thing right now, or do you?
Yeah.
Sort of, that idea of where money comes from and how you go about earning it and
And the
saving.
value, eh?
Do you? Is your family involved in the process, and how do you involve
Um,
families?
yeah, well, definitely, I definitely spoke to my brother and some other family members to help them, and it's about that financial literacy, and teaching them about the opportunities that where their money could be working harder and what could be done. And I think that's why it's a fantastic role to get into, because you definitely are able to help people, and even people you're quite close to, such as your family members.
Well, I hope you continue to enjoy it for many, many more years to come, Kevin. We'll have another chat when you've achieved the chartered status. I'm sure there'll be many
Yeah,
chats in between as well. But thank you
absolutely.
for joining me. It's been great.
Thanks for having me.
Scottish Widows is investing in business protection, better journeys, clearer tools, and reassuringly simple products. Follow Scottish Widows Protection Advisor on LinkedIn, speak to one of the business development team, or visit our advisor protection site.